Can grief make you tired? I'm tired. I don't have the drive that I usually have. And then, I mean, the big I don't sleep at all. My mind is just going. How can I fix this? How can I forget? It's doing that all night, usually when I'm in those states.
Yeah.
I wake up at, like, my wife and I call it the witching hour. It's like 3.
Right.
I wake up and I'm just all sweaty often.
Yep.
And then the other big physical thing is I will wake up and throw up in the morning when I'm in these depressive or like stress, anxiety, like physically just dry heave often. Not even like actually every morning. And it's just this, my turd, like my stomach that's how it always tends to show itself. That's when I know, like, that's often the trigger.
Yeah.
It's me waking up dry heaving when it's clicked. Oh,
okay. Very physical.
That's when I start to realize, because often we've gone on months where I've been like that. I realize it's just my anxiety that's driving that.
Yes.
And I've noticed when I can not control it, but like get off that, get back on the tracks or my routine, that it goes away.
Okay.
But that's the one big one for me when you mentioned it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a physical.
That's a big deal. Yeah.
And I lose hunger. I lose my appetite.
Right.
I don't want to eat.
You don't get hungry.
Yeah. And I'd like probably drink more alcohol during those times too.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to fall into that.
Yeah. The end of a day, have
one here, have one there. And it creeps up quickly, I think, in those stages. Just, it's an easy thing it'll just cut the edge off, right? But
right.
It's a slippery slope there too with.
Right. Yeah. You end up more depressed or.
Right. Because alcohol is a depressant for sure.
Yeah.
What about you?
It tends to come out as anger for me, like a deep seething anger towards, I don't know, I have even a hard time directing it towards anyone. And then it usually I end up just going inward, and I'll be quiet or contemplative and just get into like a worry loop, the anxiety of what if, what did I do? Am I going to fail? All the fears that come up around that. And so I'm in my head trying to solve all these problems.
Sure.
I don't know, get back to normal or something. But yeah, I would say anger. And it's generally when I'm conscious enough to get to the root of it, it's anger towards myself for a mistake that I made or for something that I missed or whatever.
Right.
Just that it didn't come through or that I might not, or I don't know, whatever the worry could be.
Totally.
But yeah, I would say that's how it generally starts. And that, going to a routine, expressing vulnerability to my wife or my friends and talking about the things that I think I should be worried about.
Right.
Always diffuses them to some level. It don't necessarily solve the problem.
Sure.
But by giving these things voice or, talking to a therapist, I go to a therapist and I talk to one and I can just blah, blah, blah for an hour about whatever it is. And it's an outlet. Writing is another great way to, sometimes the last thing I want to do is write my journal, but to write this stream of consciousness letter or whatever it is about my feeling and my anger and the deep seething, whatever that's taking me over, diffuses it and gives it an outlet and always moves the needle in the right direction.
I love that you brought up talking or just to whoever, friend, someone you trust, wife.
Yep.
And we kind of talked about before these check-ins with the wife.
That's right.
Specifically. But I think that is super important because like often with my depression or grief or anxiety, the mix of them, I find that I'll think that I've done something to upset my wife and it's something I've created myself.
There's a whole narrative.
Where I'm like, I've done this and now this is messed up and
she's probably mad about this.
And now I need to fix this. It's something that wasn't even a thing. Had I had a check-in or a conversation
Right.
I just find that communication is such a good thing.
Yeah.
Especially, right, when you're going through those times, because your mind isn't really tricking you in a way. The depression is telling you this is how it is, but it's not. If you can, and again, because my wife sees me drowning and I don't see me drowning.
Right.
I don't feel like I'm drowning.
Right.
So how do you connect the two, right? And it's like communication, right? Easier said than done, but I just wanted to hammer it because I do think whether it's a therapist or a friend or a combination of all of it, right? Like, I think that's so important. Again, I always go back to men's groups because that was the first thing that happened for me to start working on some of my grief and stuff. I was like, oh, I'm not the only person that has problems. Like, go figure, like everyone's got it.
Yeah.
And then just like two, that like just saying this stuff, like you said, even like writing it down. I think saying it, calling it out for what it is often helps too.
Yeah.
Because then that gives that person, the other person, the opportunity to approach it. I'd love to tell my wife, like, just when you see me depressed, come up to me and tell me, and I will react perfectly.
Right.
No. Right. It's never gonna.
Yeah. And then I'll be totally fine.
I'll be totally fine and be so receptive of it. But if you're doing all these other things, if you have the outlet with your men's group and you have a friend, I think then that constructive criticism coming from someone who loves you is going to be received a lot better, right? If you're doing all these things. If you're not, and then they're telling you, if you're, it's going to get defensive, right?
Yeah.
Right?
If you're totally internalizing it and it's coming out in inappropriate ways, then you need outlets. I was going to say, to your point of communication too, is physical touch. A lot of men especially respond well to touch. You know, my wife, if maybe we're in this situation or a narrative that I've built up about, well, she seems unhappy today, or it's this or that. And it could be as easy as just a hug or just touch on the shoulder and like, how you doing? You okay? You know, and just to reconnect and come out of this cerebral place of all these things that are happening that might be to some level, but maybe probably usually not nearly as bad. Yeah.
That's great. Love it.